Joining me now, Carlos del Toro, 78th Secretary of the United States Navy and Marine Corps. He served from 2021 to 2025 under President Biden. Welcome, sir. I'm awfully glad to have you here. Can you assess for us how much of an escalation this would be and what it could potentially trigger?
Well, thank you, Alex, first for having me on board. I'm actually calling in from Annapolis, where we're celebrating 50 years of women first entering the Naval Academy. We owe much to those 7,500 graduates who graduated from this amazing organization. And if you want to know more about it, just dial into USNAwomen.com. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we're escalating the actions in the Straits of Hormuz now. It's going to take an enormous amount of extra effort. We currently have 2 battle groups in the area. There's another battle group that's steaming into the Persian Gulf as well, too, or nearby. And it's going to take increasing amounts of forces at sea to be able to conduct this complicated naval blockade.
Secretary del Toro, how volatile is the situation in the Strait right now, aside from this report?
Well, it can be very, very volatile. As you saw today, apparently 2 Indian flagships were fired upon. It's obvious that Iran wanted to send a message here. I'm not sure exactly how serious they were in opening the straits when they announced it just a little bit over 24 hours ago. Of course, they announced that the ships would have to sail very close to the coast of Iran, and now they had patrol boats basically out there firing, sending warning shots on these ships to show that they have complete control over the Straits of Hormuz.
Trump says the blockade, sir, will remain until a deal, or what he describes as a transaction, is 100% complete. And while he says a deal will happen within days, Gulf and European officials tell Bloomberg it could take months. How long is the U.S. equipped to keep battleships and forces in Hormuz to keep this blockade in place?
Well, our very brave men and women certainly are capable of staying on station, and we have the forces necessary to maintain it for long periods of time. But just understand, Alex, that at the current rate right now, we're probably spending close to $1 billion a day on the actions that are necessary. During the Red Sea operations from 23 to 25, we spent approximately $4 billion over 2 years, and now we're spending approximately $2 billion a month. So the cost is extremely high. The cost on the sailors and the anxiety, of course, that's created by that with their families and all is also high. And with growing escalations, it could lead to direct conflict between Iran and the United States at sea as well, too.
Sir, CENTCOM said this morning 23 ships have complied with the U.S. orders to turn around and return to Iranian ports since the blockade began. Here is an exchange Friday between guided missile destroyer USS Rafael Peralta and a merchant vessel leaving an Iranian port. It was posted on social media by CENTCOM. Let's take a listen.
Blue Sky 4, this is U.S. Navy Warship 115. Request you return to original port of call in Iran. How copy? Over.
Copy, sir. Thank you very much. Copy, sir. May alter to Iran. Thank you.
So it seems, sir, like that was a rather tame exchange. Is it what you would expect? Because blockades, as you well know, can be considered war crimes. So is the U.S. blockade an escalatory or de-escalatory move?
Well, it can be escalatory. I mean, these are, civilian merchant mariners. Obviously, they don't have military equipment on their ships. They're to outrun these destroyers, and I commanded one of these destroyers, by the way. It is very, very difficult to do so. So they're not going to take many risks. They understand the threat that they're under, and they're going to return to port. But what happens when, a Chinese vessel or a Russian vessel is given orders to actually try to not comply with the instructions that are given by our Navy vessels? Are we then going to board those ships? Or are we going to fire upon those ships and perhaps escalate it by firing on a Chinese or a Russian flagged vessel? It's really, really complicated and sensitive, and I think we got to think this through very, very carefully. But I'd like to go back to the fact that, this is all about tactics and operations. What really matters here is what's the strategy? We don't really, the president, the administration hasn't explained to the American people what the overall strategy is. What is the political objectives, and how are we going to be meeting those political objectives? Before this escalation began, the Straits of Hormuz was actually open to shipping and traffic. It wasn't a problem. Now, we're in a worse situation than we are when this conflict started. So what are the political goals that the administration is trying to set for the American people?
It is a good question. I do have one more for you, though, because USA Today published pictures from parents of Marines on the USS Tripoli and Abraham Lincoln of, let's call them unappetizing and paltry meals that they are getting on the ships. A tortilla and a scoop of meat on an otherwise empty tray, some boiled carrots, some gray strip of processed meat, a dry meat patty on another tray. The Navy and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth denied reports of food problems. They called fake news, saying both ships have 30-plus days of Class 1 supplies food on board. NAVCENT monitors this every day for every ship. Our sailors deserve and receive the best. So would supplies be rationed in this situation, the extension of time on the waterway there in Hormuz?
I can't imagine that at this moment in time in the conflict, we don't have the supply ships to rapidly supply our carrier strike groups with food that's been necessary. I don't know the details of how those pictures came from or came about, but I would find it hard to believe that we're actually rationing food on any of our naval vessels right now.
I will say I believe it came from parents of Navy official personnel serving. That's where we got it, to the best of my knowledge.
And I'm not denying that they're real pictures. I would just find it hard to believe that they've run out of food so soon. And if they are, then it's a real tragedy. I know certainly while I was Secretary of the Navy, there weren't situations, and we were conducting combat operations in the Red Sea steadily for over 2 years, and we certainly ran out of food for our sailors and our Marines.
Well, they certainly deserve the best. Thank you very much, Secretary Carlos Del Toro. Good to see you, sir.